2026-0208. I believe we should not assume that English or any other current language is capable of completely describing deity, or that we should possess the hubris to believe that the mortal mind is fully capable of comprehending deity. However, I believe that because of His great love and mercy to us, there is much God has shared with us in resources such as the Bible that are intended by God to give us a basic understanding of His nature. In this posting, I will limit my references to the New Testament. In the context of the human experience, each person is a distinct and unique individual. This is even true in the somewhat rare cases of identical siblings or the very rare cases of conjoined siblings. I strongly believe that because of the life experience of the New Testament writers, their usual, normal, deeply rooted understanding was that each person was an individual, unique and distinct from any other individual, just as that is our understanding in this modern day. I believe this understanding formed a paradigm that was as powerful as much as it is taken for granted. Throughout the Gospels especially, that record Jesus' comings and goings during His earthly mission, but also in Acts and the rest of the New Testament, there are many dozens of references that refer either to Jesus individually, or to a Heavenly Father individually, or to Jesus and Heavenly Father in their relationship as Father and Son. My primary focus in this posting is the overwhelming majority of these references to Jesus, Heavenly Father, or both, where the writers do not convey any additional commentary or information that can unstrainedly be interpreted to suggest that the relationship between Jesus and Heavenly Father is somehow an exception to our conventional, everyday, well-known common human experience, that persons are separate and distinct from one another. For example, in the Gospel of John, chapter 11, where it is recorded that Jesus says, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me," the writer does not include any reminder or words of clarification to the reader that, in some special and unconventional sense, Jesus was actually addressing himself or some aspect of himself that was in heaven. These myriad references to Jesus, Heavenly Father, or both in the New Testament do not contradict or disclaim the usual, normal, and assumed pattern of individuals being separate and unique, and thus, because there is no such disclaimer, I believe each of these many passages witness to the correct understanding that Jesus and His Father in heaven, although they are divine beings, relate to each other in the manner that is conventional in the human experience, in that they each have individuality and distinctness from each other. If Jesus and His Father in heaven somehow did not conform to the usual pattern of individuality and separateness that is so familiar to the human family created by God, I believe the New Testament writers would have considered it incumbent to frequently, explicitly, and emphatically remind the reader of that divergence from the normal expectation, unless, of course, they believed that teaching to be non-essential or perhaps inconsequential. As a very minor focus of this posting are a very limited number of scriptures in the New Testament that could be interpreted as suggesting that Jesus and His Father in heaven are somehow not distinct and separate individuals. For example, in John 14 we read, Philip said, "Lord, show us the Father, and that will be enough for us." Jesus answered, "Don't you know me, Philip, even after I have been among you?" Although this passage could be interpreted as suggesting that Jesus and His Father were the same being in some non-metaphorical sense, when weighed against the overwhelming number of passages that treat Jesus and His Father as separate and distinct divine persons, the student of theology should be heavily biased toward an interpretation that is most harmonious with all those other references. For example, perhaps by reading this as Jesus metaphorically explaining to Philip that observation of Jesus' words and actions were absolutely sufficient for Philip to become completely acquainted with the Father, since those words and actions were a perfect reflection of the Father's will. I don't believe this teaching caused Philip, even for a moment, to consider the possibility that Jesus and his Father in heaven were, in some non-metaphorical sense, the same being. For me, the New Testament passage that finally and clearly, albeit metaphorically, answers the question, in what sense are Jesus the Son and God the Father one? Is in the Gospel of John, chapter 17. My prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be one as we are one, I in them and you in me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. Then the world will know that you sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me. I believe that by far the most reasonable interpretation of this passage is that the oneness referred to is metaphorical, perhaps a oneness of love and a unity of purpose. This interpretation can even explain the controversial Johannine comma, 1 John chapter 5, verses 7 through 8. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.